I would request all the alumni who have connected with us through YouTube to drop in their question, if any, in the YouTube live chat box, which we will pick at the end. Good evening to one and all present. I am Pal Chaurasia. We, the Guest Lectures Committee, brings you to the fourth conversation under Careers and Conversation, an elite and exclusive platform to rendezvous with eminent speakers from different walks of life, reminiscing about their personal and professional voyages. This platform aims to provide ample learning opportunities through real-life stories to faculty, students, and alumni alike. Today, our guest is Mr. Ramakrishnan Mukundan, Managing Director and CEO of Tata Chemicals. To know more about him and today's theme, I would now like to request Arun Thukral sir, our guest lecture faculty head, also a professor of practice in finance and lead corporate relation at KJSIM Institute of Management. Over to you, Arun sir.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Payal. On Careers and Conversation, we are pleased to host and converse with Mr. Ramakrishnan Mukundan, Managing Director and CEO, Tata Chemicals, who has been with the Tatas for more than 2 decades, and his career weaves a tapestry of experiences that extend far beyond the realms of a traditional job. An engineer from IIT Roorkee, he joined the Tata Administrative Services known as TAS after completing his MBA from FMS Delhi University. He is also an alumnus of Harvard Business School. During his 25 plus years with the Tata Group, he has held various responsibilities across chemical, automotive and hospitality sectors of the group. He serves on executive committees of various industry firms like CII, Bombay Chamber of Commerce, Employer Federation, All India Management Association, among others. Now a little bit about the topic and the theme. So a job is what you do when you are told what to do, and a career is what you do when no one is telling what to do. So Mr. Mukundan started his journey, and one of his first assignment was with Tata Tea, and that's why this interesting title which he only suggested is Teeing Off and Staying the Course. Leading the conversation with him is our own Raman Ramachandran, PhD Director, KJSIM Institute of Management and Dean, Faculty of Management Studies, Somaya Vidya Vihar University. Before the discussion starts, I would request Raman sir to felicitate our guest with a shot.
From a traditional.
This shawl is from Somaya Kala Vidya and is hand woven by artisans from Kutch.
From Kutch. I'm coming from pretty close to that place. Thank you.
I would also request sir to present the biography of our founder, Sri KJ Somaya.
No, I don't have that.
This is Samir's grandfather.
No, Samir will.
Thank you, sir. So now I will hand over the stage to our host and our guest for an insightful session ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Thukral. Can you hear me? Everyone? Yeah. So good afternoon, and Mr. Mukundan, thank you so much. Not loud. Is this better?
No, you got to put it closer. Up, further up.
Now better? He's clearly more seasoned with these things than I am. Yes. Better?
Yeah. If this was live, I would have not live. I would have told you you should wear it the way Lady Gaga wears it.
It's a great way to get started. So I'm really grateful to Mukundan. You know, he's a very busy guy. He just landed this morning from Jamnagar and Rajkot, heading a fairly large conglomerate like Tata Chemicals. So, you know, thank you for being here. And as soon as I said, you know, this is a conversation with students, he said, I love doing that, and that's how he is here. So I'm going to start out by really Mukundan, I told you briefly that the whole objective here is that the students get to understand that, just getting an MBA is not the beginning and end of a career. And there is a lot of other things that happens on the way, particularly for a successful career. Decisions you take, you don't take, experiences, fair bit of luck as well, sometimes. So, and that's the whole objective. So with that in mind, maybe let's get started with you kind of giving a little bit of an overview of your early days, IIT Roorkee time, then your business school in Delhi. So did you have a very clear idea as to what you wanted to do, and how did your career evolve from those early days and the influences?
So, firstly, thank you, Raman, for inviting me here. It's an absolute delight to be back here in this auditorium. This is my second visit to this auditorium. First time I was here, I was looking at startups making presentations right here. So, I think...
Riddle.
Yeah, so yes. I think it's great to be back here again. So let me just firstly say that whatever I'm going to say, and this is what I spoke to my GET batch yesterday, so I'm not going to say anything different what I told them versus what I tell TAS versus what I tell here, is that it probably you can get some insights or some thoughts out of what I will narrate or anybody else will narrate. But I think your journey is going to be your own. And I can go back to IIT Roorkee or I can go back to FMS, but we live in a very different time now. So I'd rather move forward.
Absolutely.
And I think in terms of, I just want to say three broad themes which I think are running. And I'm not going to run into sustainability or digital. I mean, these are things which are the way they're going to shape the business in future. But I really want to say the place at which you all stand today as people starting the journey I think is a great moment, and I wish I was sitting there rather than sitting here. I said that same thing to my GET batch. I wish I was just starting out my career right now where you're starting. The number one piece which I think differentiates from the time at least 33 years ago when I started working, or maybe go another 6 years when I just joined college and as in Roorkee or started my MBA, you had to go for every little piece to the library. You had to really struggle hard to get information. Knowledge was not available on tap. And just now you made an announcement that this is going live on YouTube, and we didn't have that luxury. We really had to struggle to get information. So I think what you have is the power of immense knowledge at your fingertips, which I think is a great power. If at all, what will differentiate us going forward is this access to knowledge. I think access is there, and the next layer is about how you put that knowledge to use, how you sort of spend your time engaging with that knowledge, because one of the things which you're all limited by is the number of hours we have and then how we engage with that knowledge. The second big difference which I think makes this time very unique, and I think it's going to progressively get better and better, is the avenues to apply the knowledge are going to be manifold going forward. When you talk about starting out in a career, there was a limited set of entities, limited set of enterprise. There was a stage in development India was, and I think you are at a stage in development where India has leapfrogged many of the cycles and has gone ahead. And we stand at that momentous time where we have leapfrogged even the more advanced nation by landing on the South Pole and all those great things we've done. And we'll continue to do more. In fact, last week we actually opened up the new nuclear reactor in Gujarat. It went unnoticed. Nobody even would have noticed that Karpakar, I think, fifth reactor got commissioned, and it didn't even make headlines here. So I think there are a lot of areas on which we have avenues to try out that knowledge, which sort of differentiates. So you're going to have a lot of choice and ability to sort of put that knowledge to work. Lastly, and I think I don't know how to present this, ours was a fantastically fortunate generation. Those who started working in 1985, 1995, if you take that band of 10 years, compared to any other generation, I think we were lucky, and that's why many of us hold the positions or have done what we've done. So I would not attribute that to anything more than that, but it's just that we were very fortunate. And I'll tell you the statistics behind it. India was $300 billion economy in 1990, broadly in that range. 30 years later, we are 10x of that, which is 3.7 or 11x of that, you can say. In my career, I've seen this economy grow 11 times. And that's a big boost to anybody standing anywhere. That itself pushes your career and pushes your journey forward. So we can look at it differently for the people who are entering workforce now to say that will Indian economy grow 11x in next 30 years to become 37 trillion? I leave it as a question mark. Don't answer that. But certainly what will happen is that this is a given fact for you all, for all of us who are looking forward to the next 10, 15 years. India will grow from 3.7 at least to a 10 trillion or a 15 trillion. So you will add the India which is today. We added the India which was when we started out 11 such Indias. You're going to add India of 3.75 trillion 3 times over or 4 times over. It's a huge opportunity. And I really think that's one of the reasons I say that your choices are going to be extremely different from where I was.
Yeah.
And going to the fact, did I know exactly how, or I knew what I didn't want to do. That much I can say. I had the benefit of listening to one of the India's best-known banker, Jerry Rao, had come to campus on a talk like this, and he spoke and he said, we live in a most innovative business in banking because our input is money, our process is money, and output is money. And in the process of doing this, we make money in the middle. So he said, can you think of some other place where nothing changes except that we make money out of the same product? And you got to be very innovative to do that, and we do that and that. But to me, it looked like, oh, they don't change anything, so why even bother? So I did not apply for any banks. So I wanted to have real touch and feel of products, right? Second thing, there were marketing companies. My thought at that time, and I don't want to say this now because they are some of my best customers, so I really love them because they make the profits which keeps us going. Why would you create a brand and create a margin? So I thought at the time, let me work in a place where there's real touch and feel to the product. So which is what I did. I joined a company which had to do with a group which had to do with real touch and feel. Tatas were almost in every field of economy doing real product stuff. But as luck would have it, I ended up in my first project in Tata Tea, and my first assignment was to go to Kanpur market to launch spices. They had just launched spices, and it came a full circle back because when I became MD and I was even here in my second term, one of the things we did do in Tata Chemicals was to launch spice again. So, and at least I knew what mistakes had happened at that point of time with packaging and stuff, so we tended to avoid it. But it's been a journey where I would say I knew what I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
But if you ask me, did you know what you wanted to do? I'd be, I think, not telling the truth. And did you even, have an ambition or aspire to be where you are sitting today? No, I don't think so. I think everybody wants to be someone who has a big responsibility when one grows up, but you can't define it with a position. I certainly did not have. And these things happened as things unfolded themselves. Many of the things, as you rightly mentioned, Raman, is a series of incidents and events which lead you on the path which you end up in. And one way to think about it is say that, something is in me, but then the real fact is that if we're not for those real events which happen, you would not have taken those chances, you would not have moved in the direction which one moved, and be where you are.
Yeah.
So I think the only thing I would say is that you've got to be looking out for good people to work with. In Delhi, where I grew up in, we used to have a word called satsang. Satsang was, you met people with similar thoughts and similar, and I think it's something very unique. You've got to work with people whom who sort of bring you up rather than drain your energy. As long as you're working in that environment, I think you will figure out what you need to do, and life will lead itself. Many of us will come to those moments which will impact your career. There are issues in your life which will impact your career. There are choices which you will make on your career based on something which is lying outside the career. And I have made those choices.
Maybe let's talk about that. So as you can observe, two questions. One is, how did you end up in TAS? I mean, the process, that might be interesting for the students. The second is, you talked about, yes, there are often, it's a series of events, but it is also a series of choices that you make, because at several points I'm sure you had choices of different risks and different opportunities. So could you kind of dwell on a couple of those? Maybe start off with, how did you end up in Tata Group? What was the process?
So I really don't. Well, one thing I know after engineering, when I did appear for interviews, there were 3 of companies which I got selected in, which came on campus, and one I didn't get selected. It's a big engineering company, so I don't want to name them. But I'll talk about those which I got. I was selected with Tata Steel, Tata Motors, and Voltas. All were Tatas at the end of engineering, and there was one non-Tata which I did not get selected in, but I keep telling their CEO all the time that you didn't select me at that time. But it's a good fun discussion to have. But in MBA it just happened by chance, because those days TAS used to come outside the placement cycle. Here I'm pretty sure you have day 0, day 1, day, now people have day -1, and I just don't know how many minuses you have to get companies and satisfy their HR folks. You've got to change the system, by the way. So in my time, TAS came outside the system now, so we had to go to a TAS hotel, and as luck would have it, many of us thought, worst case, what can go wrong? At least we'll get lunch in Taj Mansingh. Taj Mansingh was something very aspirational. We had gone inside to have tea once. Beyond that, we couldn't afford it. So here we were being offered lunch. So we went there, and it so happened that they went through the process. And in fact, I was the last guy to be interviewed. And I didn't know that I was the only person to be selected out of Delhi to send here. And I keep saying Rajiv Dubey, who is hired as HR head of Mahindra's, he was on my panel, and I tell him, you're probably the one mistake probably you made in getting me this far. And he says, don't keep telling that to me and tell others. But really, that's what happened. But I do know what happened in that meeting. The meeting was about propaganda. The entire interview was not about finance or management, or it was about a comment somebody made that one of our newspaper, is it a propaganda machine? And I sort of said that you can say in those days, for example, Sputnik is to take an extreme example, is a propaganda machine for those who have read Sputnik. Then there was a radio channel called Voice of America. Is that a propaganda machine? I said there are 2 versions of truth which are visible, and is it not the right thing to listen to both and then come to your own conclusions? Why should we say they're presenting their version of truth, and in life everybody has their own version of truth. So I think that became the debate. So even as I speak, there'll be a version of truth I'm giving and a version of truth running in your head about yourself. So why not keep both going? I don't know where that meeting ended. All I know was so I got through TAS,
so this was you having this conversation with the panel of interviewers.
It was like a conversation, and I still remember it was a wonderful conversation about. So it won't be about, many of the conversations you have won't be about what people say, free cash flows or market shares. It could be something completely different.
Yes.
And you have to say that those are the conversations which lead you to. So I remember having gone to Nagpur market. I'm just going to fast forward into what's real business, right? Which is why I see one of the statements I made is that business is good in execution, and academia is excellent in asking right questions. But I really think the answers are not with either academia or with business, they lie in the marketplace.
Yes. Yeah.
I think as long as we realize the truth, I think then you can always grow. So I remember going to Nagpur market, and this led to launching, TATA Besan. We were selling chana dal, by the way. So this shopkeeper simply told me, why are you selling these products like dal and chai? There's nothing. We can also bring the same quality for the same price. So then I said, then why are you stocking it? Then he said, आप लोगों को मालूम नहीं मार्केट में क्या करना चाहिए? मैंने बोला क्या बताइए क्या करना चाहिए? When he looked at me, he says, आप कितने साल से काम कर रहे हैं? मतलब बहुत साल से काम कर रहे हैं. And then he went on to say, देखिए साहब आप टाटा से हैं ना, आप ऐसी चीज लाइए जिसमें मिलावट की गुंजाइश हो. So then I said, what do you mean इसमें बताइए किसमें मिलावट? Then he immediately picked on packet of besan, put it. ये देखिए ये पाउडर है बेसन का, दाल में तो मिलावट का कम गुंजाइश है, इसमें देखिए इसमें बहुत मिलावट, ये लाइए आप लोग, ये जरूर बिकेगा, इसमें आपको प्रीमियम मिलेगा. Actually launched it, became the fastest growing product. So I think that conversation, I say that in a simple way because it tells you that sometimes the truth is not is lying with someone who is facing the customers every day, and as long as we are willing to go and learn from the truth, I think one can certainly grow. Now, going to a second question, which I don't want to forget, which is about
the choices.
Choices.
Yeah.
So sometimes these choices can be forced upon by what happens in your career and what happens in those conversations. So I was in auto components as my second job. First job was in Taj. I joined Taj in the field of in hotels, but then I shifted out of Taj into joining auto. At that time we were launching Tata Indica, and we were to be the supply base. We were to build the supply base along with my boss, whom I'm still in touch with, and a lot of what I learned because of him in terms of management practice and what you do. So he sort of called me one day, and in his own nice way, he told me, Mukund, I can't promote you anymore. So the bit of a shock to me is that, I was doing so well. We had promoted something like 7-8 joint ventures. I was on some of those joint ventures, I was on the board at that age, which is about 30 to 30 years old. For a youngster at that age to be on the board of joint ventures, because we're a very small startup company within Tata Group. We were just starting out these joint ventures. And in a startup, obviously you'll hit the top job because nobody else around to take on that role. And so I asked him, what do I have to do if I have to? And he said, you have to go and run an operation. You've done, all this setting up companies and all, but you have to really run a core operation. And I said, what do you mean by it? He said, why don't you go and run a factory? So marketing jobs were all taken, so there were people, so you couldn't offer. But factories were coming up every year. We're setting up new factories, so obviously there were enough options there. And most of the factories were in Pune and Chennai, or in Baroda. We were supplied to General Motors. They had a plant in Baroda at that time. And I just gotten married. My wife was running a excellent practice. She's a doctor in Bombay, and I went and told her, I think we need to, move because she said, you can move, I'm not coming. So I went to my boss and I told him that, listen, I can't move. We just, been together and suddenly now I can't make that shift. He says, then don't blame me that I didn't make an offer to you.
Yes.
We've had the conversation and I'm happy that you can continue here. But if you have to make that, you have to come to my room and pick that choice of going and running core operation. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So it's so continued. Then suddenly, 2 years passed by. My son was ready to, in Bombay we have this thing. When we got into school, we got into first class, second class, straight off. There was nothing called kindergarten. Nowadays you have this.
KJSIM.
So a lot of people are telling me, school admission in Bombay is going to be a problem, so you need to. So I went to my HR and I told him that, he's now 2 years LKG or whatever. He says, we have no connection, but I have few personal contacts, I'll try to help you. As I was walking out, he said, listen, you've done a startup, do you want to go and do a turnaround? I work in a place which needs a turnaround. I said, what do you mean? He says, you're very comfortable. I'm not saying you should not, but would you want to take a chance? I said, I don't mind meeting the CEO of the company, and that's how I met the CEO of Tata Chemicals in those days, Prasad Menon. Prasad, you know well.
I know him.
And I met Prasad, and here was again a leader I thought was very different, but again a leader from whom we could learn. And I said, this is going to be a different ride, and he in fact said, this is going to be far tougher than what you imagined, because I think the company had posted, one of the worst quarters they had posted, and things were in, Gujarat had an earthquake, there was a fire in the factory, there was insurance claim, a lot of other issues which are pending. So we sort of so I thought about it. Then I told him, I can come provided I get the next designation in life. It was as simple as that. It's not a very complicated thought, right? So so he somehow agreed to make me the vice president, so I agreed and I sort of shifted. And I was handling strategy and quality for the company, and one fine morning, I think 6 months down that, he walked into my office and he said, Mr. Mukundan, would you like to go and run an operation? I said, I just escaped somebody who came and told me about operation. Here I am again, somebody again. So I said, do you really mean it? He says, yes, I think that will really be the right thing for you. I think you need to go and run an operation. So I went back to my wife again. She said, listen, I think there's something about Tata's and they want to send you into operations. Yeah. And she said, this time she said you could go. That's how I ended up in Mithapur. And it was a great learning, because the unit, whatever I learned as manager was in Mithapur in Gujarat, and it was one of our difficult units. It became one of our most profitable units by the time I think I was there for 18 months, but it continues to improve itself. But there was innate point in people wanting the right kind of motivation to make the change, and I think some of the forces all came along, and I think I was fortunate enough to be there at that point. So, but if I had not gone there, I doubt I could have been sitting here and having this conversation with you. Yeah. And those 18 months were equally, like I said, the startup situation where we had a desk in our office which was around this size, my boss on one side, his secretary and me on the other side, trying to set up joint ventures, and I used to go with suitcase to Detroit to and many places I would go and say, I'm an Indian company, Tata. Many of them would look at the map and say, where is India? In those days, because we were really not, this was a land which was yet to be discovered. Ford had just come in, and Hyundai was wanting to come in. Suzuki already was big in those days. So, but so here was again a difficult situation where I think going there, I remember one of my colleagues telling me that what sort of career choice you made on the flight to Mithapur. In fact, as it was landing, this flight to Porbandar, I remember him telling me, "Abhi to tum mitti mein mil jaoge." So I said, why are you depressing me so much? Yeah. But I think it's these sort of things which sort of help you to grow. Yeah. But
I just want to dwell on that because it's very important for graduating group of MBA students to understand this. Because typically, at least I've felt that a lot of students who get an MBA now tend to think that, or tend to prefer a strategy role or executive assistance role in the corporate headquarters and try that comfortable journey and expect that will lead them to greater heights. But the point that you're trying to make is that unless you go out there and dirty your hands for a period of time, your growth potentially could be limited. Is that a message that I could?
I have a very different way. That's not what I'm saying. See, what I'm saying is it does not matter what role you do, but there is so much to learn. I can tell you one of my jobs when I was working in the footwear company was, they initially asked me to go to the stores. But that time I spent in stores gave me such a good understanding of everything which happens in footwear, including, I can actually touch and feel leather and say it's good quality, bad quality. How do you sort of look at the mistakes? How do you take stock? It does not matter what you do, but what matters is whichever area you choose, you have to be exceedingly good. But I think your point about strategy or, you need to have connection to market. Yeah, so I'll go back to this Harvard professor who I still am impressed with because So we had this case which was about furniture company, and this was a finance professor, and the case was about cash flows. So we are all, what you do, you are broken into small groups, so you spend 2 days discussing the case amongst the group and come back to the classroom. And we entered the classroom and we found there was lots of wood all over the place, some log, and then some nails, some screws, some screwdriver, some hammer, all strewn all over the room. And this professor walks in and he says, welcome to the class. This is the first case in finance, by the way. And he says, I'm going to leave you in this room for next 1 hour. And he left. And after an hour he came back. We all thought, what is this? And then half of us went out to have tea, coffee, and came back after an hour saying, we already finished the case, what is he going to? Yeah. So then he asked, how many of you played around with the wood on the floor? How many of you have nailed the hammer? Nobody put their hand up. Then he says, why are we discussing a furniture case when you don't even know what a wood feels like?
Absolutely.
What a nail feels like.
Yeah.
I gave an opportunity for an hour for all of you to try things out. And we said, no, but furniture market, he said, no. He says, then he left again for an hour.
Yeah.
He says, now you think about it and come back. So I think that tells you about whatever you do, you have to get to the real market, real place where thing happens.
Absolutely.
So it doesn't, if you're doing strategy, I do expect if you're doing strategy, you would not give a strategy without going and meeting competition, going and meeting the real people who are giving the input. If you do that, your strategy discussion will be that much more in depth. And it does not matter whether you start doing strategy, but I think getting the real touch and feel is very important. I would sort of spin it differently. Yeah. So the real life out there does not live in auditoriums like this, does not live with people like me, but it lives with the people who are transacting business every day.
Yeah, great. Yeah. So switching gears, in one of your interviews, and I quote, monogamy in one's career is as good as monogamy in marital life. Right? And I don't know. He doesn't even remember this quote, but I can give you evidence. But you spent all your life in TATA.
Yeah, but this is more an item about when you say when you tell someone 33 years in one company, many of you look as if you are you a piece of furniture or you piece of stuff artifact they put, or as we say that fixed furniture, and as the balance sheet that do figure there. But I think I have to say two things about it, which is when anybody walks into my office, I give them the same advice. And I would say the same advice because you will reach those points in your career. Many of us actually mix up two different decisions you need to make in one's career, because you will reach those decision points. Irrespective of whether you stay in the same group, because I've worked in 3 different companies within the same group and actually have done multiple functions. You have to be very clear about your leaving decision and joining decision. You have to bifurcate the two. Yeah. If you mix the two up because an offer is on the table and you take the joining decision, I think you are jumping one important question which you have not asked yourself. Why are you contemplating with the leaving decision? You need to answer that very, very deeply, because by the way, who knows the future 5 years from now in that place or this place? You will not know. And you don't know the other place equally as well as you know this place. So obviously, somebody said, when you go close to moon. When you close to moon, it doesn't look like that it's a soft. So there are lots of issues. There will be issues in every place. Yeah. I think we need to. So we don't have the full knowledge. We don't know how the future is going to unfold, how the marketplace will be. But I think what you certainly would know is your inner motivation. But if you know inner motivation to leave is clear, then I think you've got to put all the choices of joining. Yeah. If you take in that step, at least it gives you a framework of decision. And I have always used that as a framework of decision. And but it's
No, I
useful.
think that's a very, I mean, I've never kind of thought about it that way, that you need to be very clear about it.
So on monogamy, it is a bit like this. You may end up having a difficult time with your partner on a given day, but then you got to think deep about, is this a leaving decision moment or not? If it is not, you continue. You move on. That's it.
Excellent, great. Another quote from one of the interviews, and this is probably not your quote, but what the interviewer said about you, that you made soda ash and salt sexy. So how do you make soda ash and salt sexy, please? So Tata Chemicals.
I think it is as much as, to spoke about a banker's input is money, output is money, they make money. I mean, they love their job. I mean, end of the day, I think what makes a business something worthwhile is it's real people. You're dealing with real people, you're dealing with real challenges out there, and it is those interactions which really bring to life the and of course we can always paint a picture about any business.
Yeah.
So I just want to go back and give another stark example of this early on in my career. So I joined Taj, and in Taj, after 2 years there, or 1.5 years, they asked me to go and work in a footwear factory Taj had set up. In those days, every Tata company was doing multiple business, so this was a very small fledgling business, which was there in Delhi. So I started working in footwear business and engineer MBA, and so I met my friends. They were sitting, and in just somebody told me, "Tu to abhi chamar ban gaya." I had a very different view of myself. My view was, at that time, I was actually going to the fashion designers in Italy. They were designing the shoes. We were actually making the shoes for the finest brands in Germany, Castret, Kaufhof, Salamander, Gabor. These were all the brands to whom we were making the shoe designs. So we would have the designer, we would make spring-summer collection. I was actually attending the fashion shows just to understand. You would go beginning of the season, actually you go in 1 year before to basically meet with designers and the cloth houses to what is the palette next year.
Exactly.
They would say palette next year is subtle pale and the mood is somber. Or they would say palette next year is robust and very strong. It's going to be strong colors. And then you would also touch and feel the cloth and then go to the marketplace, feel, and then start to look at making the shoe design from there on. I mean, that became your starting point. Because there are a lot of inputs which go into making that it's a shoe design, right? How much you can change. But only men's shoes, women's shoes, there are a lot of options because you can play around with so much of. So I can speak for hours about design.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah.
So in my mind, I was in fashion industry.
Yeah.
It depends on where you pitch yourself. So exactly, I think there lies your answer about so you in every business there is that fun which is
yeah, but I thought maybe it was also about how you turned around and made the business more profitable and more attractive to investors. Maybe there was also a dimension.
So there are only 3 things we do in life. I want to make it simple. I will do more, but let me make it simple so that I can talk about as a company, as an individual, and this is what I told the GT batch yesterday. So I'm saying nothing new.
Yeah.
Firstly, I think the first question you have to answer is, how do I keep my business relevant? And that's a fundamental question you've got to ask about business at every stage. At the starting point, if it's a business idea, is the business idea relevant? If it's a mature business, how do I keep it relevant?
Yes.
The second one is, how do I future-proof that business or that idea so that whatever I do, it can stand test of time 5-10 years from now? And lastly, how do I build the pools of skills and talent which is needed to achieve the first stage?
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's at the company level. You can even turn it around at individual level and say, what is my relevance? How do I stay relevant? If you're a finance person, you're a marketing person, how do I stay relevant? The second question you can ask yourself is to say, how do I future-proof myself? What are those things? And then lastly to say that, listen, if these two things are known, what are the skill sets I need to figure out to address the first two? So in every business, I think that's what makes a business where it is.
Exactly.
And I don't have a better way to answer this question.
And that's what make individuals survive for a long time in a corporate, and companies survive like Tata for 200 years or whatever that has been. Now, a related, related question, is, so Tata is known for certain values. In fact, I try to look for the values. You don't have a set of values, but you have a code of conduct for all the employees, etc. Now, maybe I'm mistaken. The brief search that I did, I couldn't say any statements on values as such, but there was a fairly long list of code of conduct for employees. Now, I'm sure, doing business in a country like India, sometimes you have, as a business leader, come across situations where there has been a conflict between what you have to do to maybe do certain things for the business versus the conflict of the values. Have you been in those? So what is the general philosophy within Tata? So whenever you come to those kinds of crossroads, what questions do you ask yourself and take the right decision?
So I think it's evolved over a period of time. So if you ask me what was it 30 years ago, I remember Dr. Irani coming and telling us, the late Dr. Irani, and he sort of trained so many of us. So he came and told us, don't do anything which if appeared as a headline next day morning that your grandmother won't approve of it. There was no written down code of conduct, and this is all we knew was, so all of us went back and thought about, and it is a very simple way to deal with it. But I think what Mr. Tata did over a period of time was to sort of codify everything. So, and it has stood test of time.
Yeah.
So we have a purpose, and we have our values, and they're defined just in two words. Two sentences, each one having only 3 words each. Nothing more than that. It's very simple. Our purpose is to improve quality of life. So whether you are in a hotel business or auto component business or in chemical business, we have to do stuff which will improve quality of life of whom we serve. So effectively it's going to be, in each one of us we've got to think deeply to say, does this? So that's the purpose. And that also gives us a sense of relevance of what we do.
Yeah.
And the way we want to do is defined by the term which he had, was coined at that time, leadership with trust. So we want to lead in everything which we want to do. So if you pick a business, we want to certainly lead, but we want to do it in a way that you can earn. The trust is earned.
Yes,
it's earned through your actions, through what you do every day. So we want to do it in that manner. So these two define who we. And of course there is a code of conduct now, there is a book which defines it, and we've been sort of making it more relevant as we've come across, as the companies have become global, we've sort of fine-tuned it because of what we do have as a process is within our companies, we have ethics process which runs right up to the board. And of course it's overlaid with the whistleblower policy which SEBI has. More importantly, we have a sensitization process of ethical dilemmas. These are not right and wrong. These are zone of gray. And every year we put out, and the groups of teams actually they discuss this ethical dilemmas. And we try to sort of figure out, how the team has handled the ethical dilemma. It's a learning process. And we always say, if in doubt, just keep asking as many people. So one of the great things I did hear about Chandrayaan mission was every mission, Chandrayaan as well as the Aditya mission, every mission director, when he or she came and spoke, they spoke about something called a review committee. We want to thank the chairman, ISRO, we want to thank our teams, then they straight away went to and thank the review committee. I think it's a great process because if you knew all the answers, it's fine, but I think more important it's to, and we all learned it in MBA school, we talk about Johari window. I think this is Johari window operating at its best. What you know and what the world knows is perfect.
Yeah.
But then how do you reduce what you don't know and the world knows and what you know but the world? It is through disclosure.
Absolutely.
And feedback.
Yeah.
I think many of us don't want to have that conversation. It's difficult, but then as mature, if you have conversations with your team, conversations with people who can review, where you can disclose and you can get feedback, I think it's a journey of improvement.
Yeah, great. So, one more question about leadership. So, Mukundan was the youngest CEO of it in the Tata Group, right? I believe you are still, that record you still hold?
Many of Mr.
Okay, so
One of the younger ones.
yeah, one of the youngest, and at least for a time you were perhaps the youngest, and yet, you have maintained a certain level of humility and, despite all that success. And I just want to share a quick anecdote. He had given me his assistant's number about 2 weeks ago so we could coordinate his visit, etc. And I tried to, and my assistant, Thukral, all of us tried to contact the assistant, and she was on leave and she wasn't answering the phone. So finally, out of desperation, I sent him a message. He called me back and said, so just ask your assistant to call me. Why are you wasting time trying to call my assistant, So it's a mark of, humility of an individual who is at this level. So some thoughts about it is the Tata Values. I know that there are inspirational leaders that you have. So something that you would like to share on that.
Yeah.
So where does it come from? Is it...
So firstly, I think, all of us have difficult times in our life. I think she was having a huge pressure within family, so she was not probably, so I certainly think, so secondly, I think it is, many of us have the habit, we don't want anything pending. So I always tell my team, send me a mail, you will get a response by the end of the day, or at least by tomorrow, next day morning you'll get it. You will get a response. That is the easiest way to keep in touch. The thing which I tell the team, why pushing an item back is not a great thing to do. Sometimes you want to push it, but then you keep a list check of that, what item you pushed back. Because life is like that stuff happens. Other things gain importance.
Yeah.
And then this gets into background, it never comes forward. So better to sort of close out as quickly as possible so that nothing is pending. So this lesson I learned from my indulgent bosses who sort of perfected that in me. And if you come, my table will be clean, my mailbox should be empty, but generally it's a good practice, and it's you just have to respond.
My table is also clean, but mailbox is never empty. So
well, it gets empty by the night or whatever. You keep getting filled up. But in terms of, one of the things which happens at home, happens in workplace, is that we all begin to look up to people and become more like what they are, those who are our, so, and it's true, when you are in leadership position, what you do filters down. And I think we were very fortunate to have I would say, leadership which was always indulgent and also allowed us room to correct. But at the same time, I think set examples which were terrific to follow. And right from our chairman, Mr. Tata, and then all subsequent chairman, they've always been approachable, very much, and I would say that about our managing directors and the leadership. They've been one of the team, and it's been like that, and maybe it sort of rubs off on everybody, and you start to become part of that. So it's a more a culture thing rather than individually, and it's also a more comfortable place to be.
Yes.
When you don't have barriers, you don't have layers, and
exactly. And you have to put up an act. And
it's very tough to put up. I can tell you, it's really tense if you have to.
So I'm going to have two more questions, and I'm going to open it up because I'm sure students have a lot of questions there. So that's very unrelated, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to ask them. So I didn't know that you were a runner and that you ran 45 minutes every day. So maybe a little bit about that. Do you still do it? How does it help you with your kind of work? One. The second question, very unrelated, is what keeps you awake at night? So, over to you.
So in terms of running, I think I used to stay in Colaba when I was younger in my young management days, and we had the access to Cricket Club of India at the Brabant Stadium.
Yeah, Monkey Day, yeah.
So it started off as, morning run, so me and my wife would run. We did 5 rounds, one day it became 10, and we were running 10 rounds for almost, I think. So one day my wife said that, listen, can we run 20? So mentally you realize you start running and then you cross 10 rounds, your mind is saying, but then if you shut that item, you can keep running. You did that, and you suddenly realize a lot of it is mind game. More importantly, what it did tell me was that, the first day when you run, 1 round looks tough. Second day when you run, 2 rounds look tough. But as you keep running, it becomes like a rhythm. The most important thing that, at least in my view, what I take away is that just trying it is the most important thing. I mean, trying and then attempting. Because if you show up and start trying, I think everything else starts to fall in place. In many of the areas we want to do, we don't try, we don't even make an attempt. I think that is really, and if you say that, do you still run? No, I don't. But I do walk every day, so I will clock my 10,000 steps.
But your boss is still a runner, right?
I walk. I'm very clear about it. I walk. I finish my 10,000 steps a day diligently, and whatever it may be, that even if I am traveling, I'll do it in the hotel room, up and down between the door and the window.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah,
wow.
But it will get done. That's it.
Okay.
And it
So
takes
it's a
about
discipline. Yeah.
It's a discipline. Every 1,000 steps is about 9 to 10 minutes. So you've got to give 100 minutes to yourself. But that's when you get the best thoughts. Even the teeing off and staying the course is the morning walk.
Okay.
As I was walking, I said, you want an interesting title, what do I think of? That's
Great.
So the second question of yours was about
What keeps you awake at night?
thankfully, I'm a good sleeper. And I wake up every day at 5:30 or so, most of the days.
But it's more of a,
So if you see, we are in chemical business.
what kind of,
if you say what creates tension in your mind when the phone rings. The tension is always, when you're in chemical business, tension is always about safety. I think it is number one issue. You are always paranoid. There's some incident which has happened, which we haven't thought through, and I think we've done a lot of stuff, but yet I think I would be failing if I didn't say that we have a long way to go, and we have to make it an important piece of, at least in the chemical industry, that we can't hurt people. They've got to go exactly in the same condition they came in the morning, or even better condition they came in the morning, and that has to be the at least at workplace, if you say. And I think you would agree with me. You're from the same industry.
Absolutely. Yes.
I don't know about safety is the...
So I've exhausted my questions. I'm sure there's a lot of questions out there. So now we have about 15 minutes, right? I mean, you need to leave at 5:45.
It's okay.
Yeah. So who wants to? And we have also a lot of faculty here. Yeah. So the first question out, your black T-shirt here. Yeah. Let's have a mic over there. Yeah. So just introduce yourself, and then maybe it would be helpful to just stand up so we can see you well. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, sure. Hello. My name is Nikhil, and I'm in the second year of my MBA here. And it was very interesting to me when you said that, how important it is for business to stay relevant in today's context. It's very dynamic, how things are changing. Even the biggest of the firm today face this kind of dynamics where they have to, find ways to stay relevant. Chemical industry being highly dominated, there's a lot of players out there, players like BASF and a lot of them. So what are the things that you're looking forward? What is your vision in Tata Chemicals, and what are the things that you think would be relevant for your business in Tata Chemicals that will help you stand out in tomorrow's future there? If you could shed some light on that.
We're going to give the mic to the other lady next to you because I'll take 2-3 together questions here.
So, hello sir, and this was a really nice session. I want to know about, like, in this session you have been talking about how people are assets to us, how people are assets to the company. But I want to know your perspective as a leader. How do you actually convert people to assets? How do you actually make people much more useful and resourceful to the company or the organization?
Okay. So let me first start with the question on what are we trying to do to stay relevant. And see, one thing I want to say, every industry, if you ask the leader in that industry, will say, I work for the most interesting industry in the world. Otherwise, why would I be here, right? And I think we have a huge role. To me, one thing I keep telling the industry in the meetings is that we have to be the solution for the world's problems. And truly, chemical industry has a huge role to play when it comes to decarbonization, when it comes to things of, what I call the few problems of the world, food, energy, and water. We have a lot of solutions on food because world needs more protein, more food production. Energy, again, if you talk about energy transition, I think a lot of the solutions are going to come from, look at a simple thing like energy storage. You've got chemical storage, you've got electrochemical storage, there are multiple ways of storing energy. And then water, again, I think is going to be a big issue going forward because access to clean water is going to be a big issue. And I think, again, chemical industry has got a huge role. So really, we have to be part of the solution of the issues which faces. That's how we stay relevant. And I think we've got to connect the dots to everybody else. If you see, if you look at a product like soda ash, it goes to making glass. A few years ago, it would have been, container glass or flat glass. Today, if you see which is the fastest growing segment, it is really the solar glass. What goes on the solar panel. And it's like this, every 10 gigawatts of solar panel needs, every 100 gigawatts needs about 1 million tons. So it's an equation you can sort of draw and say, listen, if India is saying 500 gigawatts, then we need 5 million. So you can convert that number. We won't be supplying everything, but we can participate in that market. The other big market is lithium carbonate market because every ton of lithium needs 2 tons of sodium to make lithium. So we are in the sodium business. So I think if you go to any other company, they would tell you the reasons why they would, but it has got to do with the issues we are facing. Now coming down to the people issue, I think companies don't solve the problem. It's the people in the companies who solve the problem. And I think the only thing we can do as colleagues, as a frontline soldier, as leaders, is to create an environment where job can get done better or faster. And by that I mean create an environment where people can find solutions easily, remove the roadblocks they have. Most important thing, if you can take out the roadblocks, half the battle is won. People are more motivated. 90% of the time we create roadblocks to check and balance, but I think if you can sort of eliminate them and there are ways and means. But really the core of how if you take that first step is fine, then really how do you sort of make people move in the direction is to define the purpose. Once the purpose is clear and you know everyone wants to work for an organization which is purpose filled. Once the purpose is clear and it's a ennobling purpose and that creates a motivation to do that. And secondly, are you giving opportunities for everyone to learn and grow? And at no point you can say you have learned enough, you have grown enough. Even today, for example, if you say, do you know anything about, let's say, and this I would say. So there was this whole thing about ChatGPT which came out. It had 1 million people in the first week or whatever. One of my classmates from Roorkee sent me a link saying that try this out, and he's one of the big bankers in India. So he sort of sent it to me. So I was just thinking through what to do with it. we usually sit together as a team to write the annual report for the shareholder, because there are many sections you have to give a team, write about the company to the shareholders. So leadership team sits together, and we usually have this offsite to sit together a day to define what it will be, because then details can get filled in. Somewhere around November, December we sit. We figure out a date where everybody is available. And we had the first meeting, there was a second meeting, and this thing was coming up. I was to leave my home at 8:30. 8:15 I opened, first time subscribed to ChatGPT, and I wrote in ChatGPT saying that letter to shareholder by Indian Chemical Company CEO. That's all I did. Out came a letter. And it doesn't stop there. So I took a printout of that letter, and I also took a PDF. Yeah. I went into this meeting, and I was really delighted with what happened. So everybody had come with their preparation. I said, let me start with the letter. I need to do. I said, plug that in. I put the letter out. They said, this covers everything. I mean, you got all points covered. I said, good. Then I told them it's actually ChatGPT which wrote it. Yeah. We modified it, but I just think, new tools are always there. Yeah. We must constantly learn. I keep telling myself the only reason we can sort of participate in the process because we are learning.
Great. Next. One there in the corner, he wrote. Yeah.
Good evening, sir. My question to you...
Bit closer, we can't hear you well. Yeah.
I'm audible now?
Yeah.
My question to you is, after the pandemic, so what were your key managerial takeaways pre-pandemic and situation, how did it change, and from a managerial perspective?
There were two models, one in the rear and one in the front, yeah? Yeah, that, and then there's one here.
Hello, sir. My question is with regards to ethics. Since you mentioned how teams at Tata solve the grey areas of ethics, so have you faced any such situation where you had to deal with a situation of a kind, and what advice would you have for a budding entrepreneur?
Person here in the front, here. Here. You put your hand up, it'll come, yeah.
Hello, sir. It's an absolute pleasure to hear you. So, my question to you is, sir, like suppose you meet your younger self who is just going to enter in the corporate, and with all the experience and knowledge that you have now, what would be that one or two advices that you would give to your younger self that anyhow this should be done?
Okay, you're grilling me now. Good. So let me start with your question and then go back to COVID and ethics. So I think the only advice I would give myself is, at this point in time, don't take yourself too seriously. There have been moments where I think that's the biggest mistake we can make, because there's a frame in your mind and there's a context out there, and you will find a way. I think many times we take ourselves a bit too seriously, and we take too long to get to the same spot which would have happened if you had so there's something called emergence. Let the thing emerge, right? So it will certainly emerge. So that doesn't mean you let it drift, but I think that's where I would say it does. And certainly have fun, because many of the incidents I remember about my career are all things which, for example, traveling on a state transport bus on the rooftop. I was, even today and yesterday I was recounting that to the GETs, because it happened at the spur of the moment, because that was the last bus leaving Kiriburu, Sakaburu in Bihar, and I had to get on because I had to get to another place. And what do? But you do it once in your life, but then it remains as a mind spot, right? I think that would be my only point about what I would want to convey. In terms of COVID, I think COVID really did demonstrate that if you have good people, they will certainly keep the organization going. So we were very fortunate. We had an operation in Singapore and we had heard something about something's happening in China from Singapore team. So we decided, I think there was a national curfew or whatever happened, where the Prime Minister had said, and then he said, we're going to close everything. That's how it happened in India's sequence. About 2 weeks before that, we had decided to say, can we work from completely remotely? And we tried it first time, it didn't work. So we then fixed up many of the issues in the company and then tried a week later, actually it worked. So when this happened, it was really, so one is, can you pick up signals and prepare in advance? I think that is one lesson I would say. So we're very fortunate we did. Somebody in the team said that, what's happening in Singapore may not be one-off, so let's prepare for it, at least what we're getting from there as input. The second thing, of course, as the process was going on, I think we were responding, but it also talks to you about if you have agile teams, you can respond fast. And agility is extremely important because even the government was putting rules. We had teams in one district, we had to cross over to the factory in another district. There were borders being put up, teams couldn't go. Suddenly teams which are on the other side were actually using their mobile camera phone to try relay back to say, how do I take the next operation? And they were getting instructions on the phone. A lot of things we innovated as we went along, but I think this was really, and lastly, I think crisis management, I think as a subject, many of us, risk and crisis management, we don't really pay a lot of attention, but I think it's important to know that risk and crisis management are real and we need to sort of pay more attention to it. I don't know how it is in the management school, at least in my time it was not even a topic. And to us, at least the learning was that you need and what you do in crisis management, of course, is scenarios. You are just playing out a scenario and saying how will you as a team respond, so that when the scenario unfolds, you have at least some form of playbook available. Not everything is going to be perfect, at least some form of playbook available. I think preparing those playbooks is critical.
Yeah.
So
the fact that an organization kind of goes through even a simulated exercise of an emergency response or crisis, and that prepares you so much better to actually come.
Absolutely, I think that it does. Yeah. And in terms of ethical dilemmas, I think they fall in 3 buckets, by the way. And I think one is clearly the black and white, where you can distinguish and anybody can distinguish. I think that, of course, certainly no one can. It is those little things, and how do you sort of send a signal out there, right? Supplier wants to come and meet you in Diwali, wants to give you Diwali sweet, Diwali gift. What do you do? So we have devised, each one of us devised, but we put it out as a process now. Is that when the person comes with a gift, take it, tell him that next time just send me a greeting, you don't have to give me a gift. So at least you don't offend him. And then what we normally do is distribute it amongst all employees, saying that I got this gift, this is for everybody, let everybody take it, so that it's not kept in the room. If there is something more expensive, which comes as a form, which I'm saying is not disproportionate, you simply give it up. Somebody gives let's say a porcelain mug set, whatever. We then deposit it with HR team. And what happens, we have these felicitations and functions where we give it back saying that, listen, these are things which company got us gift, but we're giving it to you in your recognition for a great work. So that everybody knows it is not something company has bought, but it is. So there is an inventory of stuff which our HR has, and that's really what we do now. And but that's taking one area, but there are many dilemmas which come. Many dilemmas which come, and I think each one of them we need to deal with it. Then there is a whole host of other issues which obviously are more difficult to deal with. For example, the prevention of sexual harassment cases. Then there is this whole issue of discrimination cases, where so you have to then sort of lay it down. And discrimination cases are becoming very sensitive now with this LGBTQ and all that. It's becoming, you have to sensitize people more So there is no black and white. It's a process of learning and process sensitization. And when we started the thing in the factory, for example, we said we want more diversity in workforce, and the plant, when we wanted to get more women, this GT batch actually has more engineers, women engineers than men.
Okay.
So it's amazing how things have changed, and we had to sensitize our men workforce about receiving women who are coming into the plant, because it's something new for them. They've never seen in a chemical factory, right?
Yeah.
And these are things which you sort of cross, and there will be few things which will go off, and but then you sort of tend to deal with it by engaging with the point, and then making sure that it doesn't sort of being watchful, and but there's no one way or another. But I think we have committee of people who go through this, and really nothing better than debating and discussing this point.
Great. I think we have time for maybe another 2 questions. Yeah. Okay, there is Nikhil. Now it's the turn of the faculty.
Good evening, sir. Wonderful session. It's about staying the course. I want to, if you can talk a little bit about resilience, both how in real difficult times, not just COVID, right? What do you do really to stay resilient, and how do you motivate other people during times of adversity, and how do you ensure that you nurture resilience as well?
Yeah.
So I think rather than go to the piece of resilience, I think it's about what I call the before every journey you want to embark, you should know the difficulty of the journey. It's not going to be easy. So there's this famous point which people talk about, the Hudson Bay Company principle. You read it in college? Yeah, where you sort of go out, and after you go out, you check whether you got everything to go out in the snow. And if you don't have, you come back again. So you don't go all the way out. You go, let's say, 2 kilometers out, so that you can still come back. At that point, you actually camp and see whether you can really camp and survive. If you think you can't survive, you then come back to your base camp, because you haven't taken that step of point of no return, but you checked everything just enough far away so that you can still come back, and you really live it, and then you come back. So in terms of the whole process, it is a conversation end of the day, and I think it's a difficult conversation to have. So when we were looking at the site, and because it needed a lot of drastic improvements, I remember sitting together as a team, and I sort of was laying out a lot of things have to change here. Number of headcount has to change, the skill sets have to change, our system process change. So we put out a list. So my point to the team was, listen, are we all do we all buy into this together and stay the course? Or, halfway down the course when things get tough, you want to sort of walk away, so that you sort of paint a picture of how difficult it's going to be, however much you can foresee. And I was going on and on and on with my team, and I remember a guy called Jacob, he put up his hand up and he says, can I go to the board and tell you something? So I said, obviously you can go. And he went and put a V like this, and I said, what is it? He says, the shape of India. So it was like, and then he says, you know what is on this side? I said, Arabian Sea. So then he said, listen, if you don't do this company, this unit can go in the Arabian Sea. And he turned and he told me, you have come from Bombay. You will go back and do some other stuff, but we are engineers who are here. We have to face the music. So we want to do this. So I think that changed the entire conversation in the room. From a point where people were having self-doubt issues, and then we kept reminding ourselves every time we came to the fork, we said the Jacob moment of truth of that, was something which we used to remind ourselves. So you need something like that. So it is not as if it is, and every situation will present yourself with some moment which will keep you going, but you need to know what it is. And sometimes it may emerge when the crisis happens, sometimes it may emerge right up front, but it is important to know it.
Yeah. So as a matter, matter of coincidence, sitting next to the person who asked you a question is Jacob, who often brings points of truth in marketing and brand management. Jacob. Yeah. So, okay.
I'm just curious about the title, singing off and staying the course. Do you play God?
I don't.
I thought you were 10,000 steps are happening there on that.
No, he told you, it means his room, bedroom.
So this was about, he sent a message saying that from the moment you started your career, first assignment to this, we will have a conversation. So, the flash in my head was Tata T. Then I was walking, then I said, and he had spoken about career, so it sort of,
That's right.
it sort of flashed.
I think it's a beautiful title. Okay. Yes, Subhagna, yeah.
Yeah, one question, because you have spent the entire career within the same group. Now, in this generation, do you think it's a generational issue because people do not want to stay longer in an organization, and with so many choices, hence experimentation happens? In such case, there could be a challenge in gauging career potential, because how do you know, because a person has just come in 2 years or 3 years span of time, leaves the organization, right? So how do you go about gauging career potential within such a short span of time?
So I think the two things which, I'm going to say something which I don't know whether I truly have experienced, but at least what people have told me from HR professionals and my bosses, they always have told me that people don't leave company, they leave their bosses. So I think we need to be extremely clear about, what kind of if somebody in my team is leaving, I got to reflect on what have I done to sort of, very important. So that's one piece. The second piece is about the way we look at talent. Do we worry about somebody who is very high talent, whether that person will stay, he or she will stay? We don't worry about it. The reason is very simply, even if that person comes and works for us for 2 or 3 years, they will lift the organization in a different place.
Yeah.
It may fall back a little bit, but it will still be in a new place completely. So we've had the benefit of wonderful people who come and work for us, who are doing equally well somewhere else, and the wonderful people who continue to work for us. But we value all of them, and given a choice, we would certainly go for the best available at that point of time, not worrying about whether the person is going to stay or not.
Yeah. So
One question asked.
Professor Isaac has a point of truth now. So absolutely the last one, yeah? And then we have to close because he has to get somewhere else. Yeah. Yes, Prof.
Yeah, Jacob has one, and then Isaac.
There is one more? Is that?
No, you carry on. You ask, then we'll go. We'll finish.
Hi, I'm a past Tata Group, manager. One of the questions that I have is a very involved question. 2611 really has been it's been a pivot as far as Tata Group is concerned. How has the Tata Group taken, employee engagement to go beyond duty, and has it been instilled into the employees, throughout the Tata, Group's companies? Question which I'm asking from outside, because being an insider, I left Tata much earlier to this particular 2611. So that's the only question that I have.
Yeah. So you also want to ask your question, so then we will, yeah.
Hello sir, Avdut this side. My question to you is related with the analogy that you have used while offering deliberations. It was about money input, money process, money output, and in between also you earn money. The bank earns money. So the career in which we are, wherein knowledge is input, knowledge is process, and knowledge is output. So and I'm not sure whether we make money or we earn respect. So what is your take on this?
A good one. So let me start with the employee engagement piece. What happened in Taj that day, and the way employees rallied to take care of the guests, even at the at the, let's say, at the extreme risk to their life, and many actually gave up their life, I think is exemplary. And what do we do as a process? I think the focus continues to be on culture. And I think culture building takes time, it takes a lot of effort, and we seem to have that unique culture, and different companies may be in different stage of evolution there. I think Taj was at a very, very high end at that point of time, and it demonstrated itself. But if you go to many of our plants, factories, you would find second, third generation who would continue to sort of, and the only reason why they sort of continue to do is the purpose. Again, I go back to that. If there is a sense of purpose and you build an environment which people can connect and deliver, and that's the effort we do, and we focus a lot on leadership development, and we do all the process piece, which is employee engagement survey, then people giving us feedback, and then going back and working on feedback. But that's a process. But I think overall it comes down to a very soft element of culture building, and I think this relating to the COVID piece. I think post-COVID, one of the difficulties we have is culture building happens when you can bond together, like in a room together, face to face, much easier than on a Zoom screen or on a Teams screen. And really, we think while it may not be a great issue for people who have been in the company long enough that they already have that bond, but when someone new comes, this remote working really needs to be a measured element in the process with a lot of effort on actually engaging together, because that process of engagement is actually what builds a large part of the culture. I think that's one lesson, and I don't know whether HR folks have figured it out. We have figured it out. We are also struggling with this whole piece. It's a reality that people want to have more flexibility with their time, but it's also a reality that the culture is something which keeps the organization going. So it's truth yet to be discovered, and it's a work in progress. And with respect to knowledge, I will go back to only one Mr. Mashelkar. I'm not going to take credit for this. And we asked this question about research and development and innovation, and he sort of captured it, and it sort of tells you about. But knowledge is very critical, by the way. I always say that, which is why I said knowledge and execution, both are two different pieces, but the answers are somewhere else. Knowledge gives you the insight to ask the right questions, or the questions which are not asked, whereas execution tells you, what you can do in the marketplace. But having asked the right question and the execution, I think answers one has to be observing in the marketplace. But once, when I asked Dr. Mashelkar about R&D and innovation, he put it very nicely. He said, research and development is converting money to knowledge. Is not answering your question. And he says innovation is knowledge to money. So if you ask me, what do institutions which are only knowledge need to do? They need to innovate more, because that converts knowledge to money. Maybe in that lies the answer. I don't know whether I've addressed it, but I will certainly have a discussion with him, with Professor one day.
Great. Yeah. So Mukundan, I enjoyed sitting here talking to you. I hope it was worthwhile for you to be coming out here. I'm sure they will vouch for the great hour and a half that you have. So now you have something to say? Please go ahead.
I would like to call now Professor Vidya Thakkar ma'am to present the school as a token of gratitude to our guest.
No? Listen to this. Oh, read out something. Okay.
I'll read out the scroll. Your educational journey from the labs of IIT Roorkee through the corridors of FMS Delhi, across the lawns of Harvard Business School, has crafted you to be a perfect fit for India's most respected business group, the Tatas. Your success at the TAS exam helped the company showcase the diamond that they found in you. Bright people with bright minds can easily navigate through challenges of the VUCA world across industries, whether it is playing with substances or assembling giant automobiles or leading people in the hospitality sector. Your authentic and humble self has been the catalyst that has influenced several people who are associated with you. Being true to your alma mater's motto of nothing can be achieved without hard work, your career journey of 25 plus years with the Tatas is an inspiration for all to integrate personal goals with that of the organization and thus become an alchemist in the society.
I did request Irfan to come forward with the mugs which we will like you to sign, sir, as a memento for us. So 1 minute. I would like to express my heartfelt appreciation to Ramakrishna Mukundan sir for gracing us with his presence and enlightening us with such a words of wisdom. I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Raman sir for his invaluable contribution to the 4th lectures of our initiative, Careers and Conversations. Your insights has made this event truly remarkable. I would also like to extend thanks to Arun sir, Advin sir, Krupa ma'am, Vidya ma'am, Minal ma'am and the technical team for ensuring the success of the event with their remarkable effort. Furthermore, I want to acknowledge the continuous support for the PR and Branding Committee as well as the Alumni Committee. To everyone present here, students, faculty, I thank you all for joining us for an enlightening session and being such a great audience. I did request everyone to exit in orderly manner as the coupon which